Hi. I'm glad I was here earlier and I met 3 students, Christian's one of them there, so I feel more comfortable having met some people. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Okay. That's interesting that you saw the work at the Henry. I can't remember what year that was.
2007.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, I think 2007 or 8. So.
Okay. That was really mold making and casting. It's funny you refer to casting because I call it mold making because the mold is harder than the cast. The mold is everything, so I call it mold making, yeah. I selected some works. I kind of knew it was going to be a student audience, so I selected works that where I can talk about not technical things so much as, well, maybe it is technical. It's technical in the sense of how to approach nothing, which is what happens when you start to make a work. There's really nothing there. And how you kind of conjure or pull something out of the hat, tiny, tiny impulses and desires and ideas, hopefully turn into something material, something solid, something worthwhile, something that's worthy of the time you've put into it. So you're all in that process now, and I noticed that this morning when I was talking to students that we were in the same place. It doesn't change. I've been making work since the 60s, so I can't even count anymore. It's lots of years, and it really hasn't changed in terms of the apprehension, the almost fear and loathing that I have at the beginning of trying to make a work from nothing. Then there's this sort of, there's an inertia, and you have to kind of stick with it. You've got to show up. And then it starts to take off, and it's the most exhilarating and fantastic thing, and until maybe 3/4 of the way through. The last quarter is hell. But you have to do that last quarter. And then for some reason you do it over again. You get up and start over again. So half of it is agony, and half of it is just the most, exquisite thing. So it's kind of understandable. Might be like drinking alcohol. In fact, quite a bit of my work is about addiction. I have no addictions myself, but I'm curious. Maybe I have an addiction to going to the studio. Okay, where is this thing now? Where is my whole show here? Do I have to sign in?
Did your computer go to sleep?
I guess. There it is. Okay. So, yeah, I thought I would start with the studio because this is the place that's so important to me. I've been in the same space for over 20 years, probably almost 25 years, which is extraordinary given real estate in the last 20 years. It's about 1,000 square feet. It's in an old wooden building. It's quite a rare building on the east side of Vancouver. It's been kept alive by the fact that a lot of artists are in the building. There's 300 tenants in the building. It's a massive 2 buildings banged together. And of the 300 tenants, I would say 1/4 of them are visual artists. Many of them are kind of Sunday-ish artists who work exclusively for this thing called the Culture Crawl, which is a Christmas time event where the building is open to the public, and the public comes, and the artists open their studios, and they sell work, and they show their work. So they use their studio kind of like, what do you call it, farm to table. I only am the farm. I don't do table at my studio, so I'm not part of the Culture Crawl. But I have to thank those artists for keeping the building alive because it's become a kind of a cultural amenity in Vancouver. The owner of the building, he would be pilloried if he developed the building into a condo. The city would not forgive him. So because of that, because of the kind of lightweight commercial aspect of many of my colleagues in the building, I get to keep my studio for 25 years without having to move. The other thing about having this space is that when I found it, 25 years ago, it was easy to find a space because most of the artists in Vancouver had kind of switched over from analog to digital, in effect, and wanted really clean spaces. They wanted offices and clean, and they were new kind of They didn't want, you can see how my ceiling is crumbling down. They weren't doing sculpture. No one wanted to do sculpture 20 years ago. It seemed really old-fashioned, kind of dirty, kind of romantic, a bit stupid. Sculptors have often been accused of being stupid or dumb. Is dumb and stupid the same thing in your mind? So nobody wanted this. They were doing photography. They were doing that kind of conceptual photography that kind of occupied most of the 2000s. So I'm beavering away in this space alone. There's nobody else on the floor. And now everybody wants a space like mine because the tide turned, didn't it? So you have to wait for the tide to turn. If the tide is against you now, it will turn. It will turn in your direction. But you have to hang in there for a long, long time. So in the studio, in this image in the studio, on the right-hand side, I have works that I've just kind of finished. They're small. I am working quite small these days for, I don't know what reason, for fun. I guess it's quicker, it's more fun than taking on a massive project. I've done some public work that just eat up 6 months, eat up 2 years, and it's not so much fun. To the left is my mold making nook. I couldn't get the whole thing into the frame, but the table with the bright colors on it is where the mold making happens. In the middle is my table where I'm kind of developing ideas. Over on the right, there's sort of you see where the shop vac is. I have a helper now who comes in 3 days a week, and he's kind of, I asked him to come in on a regular basis because I thought my facility was becoming crummy. I thought I was making crummy, technically crummy work. And the first thing he said was that my glasses were too weak and I should get a headlamp. So I got the headlamp and I got the glasses and I said, okay, Josh, you're fired because I'm good now. I had just kind of lost my eyesight a little bit without knowing it. But anyhow, Josh is so good. He's there 3 days a week, and he kind of takes care of tons of stuff. I'm teaching him mold making now. He didn't know how to do it. It was the only thing he couldn't do. On this table where I'm trying out a new idea, so I thought I would just start here because it's top of mind for me of what to do about this kind of donut. And I'm sure that you've had the same question, haven't you? What do we do with these kinds of donuts? They're sort of in my face all the time. They're in my mouth all the time. And so I often start a work with just that thing I would call desire, which is the thing that takes you towards something. There might be, different categories of artists. There might be, if we were in the medical profession, there's the artists that want to be in the emergency room, so they want to deal with emerging problems and excitement. Then there's all the family doctors who want to kind of produce things that make people feel good. Then there's other doctors. I would say I'm more like a shrink. I'm like a shrink doctor. I want to kind of figure out why we do what we do. So I want the slower, bigger picture, not the urgent, fast picture. So none of my work is topical about, social issues, let's say. I think all artists are necessary, so I'm not mocking the others. But I base my initial interest in things that are attractive to me. And I know that attraction has been programmed, so I'm not like looking for an essential self. I'm looking to see how I am actually constructed, how my subjectivity is constructed. So the donuts were an idea, and I have more to say about them throughout. They're also an idea of, I like to include things in a work that are not pertinent, that aren't important, that aren't major signifiers. I mean, everything is a signifier, but I don't think you think of a donut. Nobody here is trying to interpret, what does she mean by the donut? It just is a donut. So I really like those things that are kind of zero-ish. Nothing important is going on. But here's another problem that the studio, that being an artist creates a problem for the artist. Artists are driven by an interest in being alive and the things that come with your consciousness, the things that are beautiful. Artists are are driven to be part of that, to be part of the world, to be part of beauty and kind of engage in the making of that, or the appreciation or the understanding of it. But the minute they start to work, they kind of kill that thing that they love, because in a way they're in the process of creating a representation of the thing they love. And I don't know if you've noticed this, I think you learn this pretty quickly as an artist, that representation takes place in the absence of the real. So the minute you make a representation, you actually don't have the thing that was compelling in the first place. Mold making is classic for that. Photography is classic for that too. So then the job is, you take the real thing from the world, the thing that's attracted you, you kill it in the studio by a variety of means. There's, you know, endless ways to kill life in the studio. You kill it, and then you've got to try to bring it back to life through various, let's say, juxtapositions or relationships that you develop, various technical things, various considerations, let's say. So at this point with the donuts, I knew I didn't want to eat them. I knew that I couldn't keep them for very long. I thought of putting them directly into a work as greasy donuts, but that's a little, it doesn't suit my attitude towards the world. I'm not trying to give the finger to the world. So I don't want to put a greasy donut into something and kind of say, okay, fuck you, like deal with the greasy donut. That's just not part of the way I'm approaching life. So I had to think about it. This looks like a big jump, but I had to think about this life-death thing. And I realized that I need the donut to function. I need to bring it to life again. I need to consider it as a body, as I would consider my own body. One thing I don't do is include images of bodies in my work. I've probably got 2 works that have bodies. This is one of them. It's only about this big, and it's called Body, because it's so rare. Such a rare experiment for me. And maybe this is 10 years ago, I guess. I just took a doll and I painted it with, I don't know what you use, Matrix G or Jesmonite or Forton. Do you know those materials? Or casting materials? It's a plaster that has a latex component, and so I painted the doll with that. The box is made of the same material, just cast into a cardboard box. And it was dead until I decided to take care of some aspect of it. And in taking care of it, I put a little pillow under the sculpture's head. I know the sculpture doesn't have feelings. I'm not pantheistic. I'm not an animist. I'm not a pagan. Maybe I'm a pagan. But just this idea of extending to the figure or the sculpture attributes that I would extend to your body gives it that tiny bit of thing I'm looking for, which is a connection between the perceiving subject, who is the viewer, and the objective world. I'm throwing in a few artists that are not me into this. This is incredible mold making. I'm not sure how she does this, but this is why I don't want to use the body in my work. Again, it's that representation thing. And the minute I turn the feelings I have about being alive, as soon as I turn them into material, my feelings have been disregarded, because then I really do just deal with the body as material. I think an artist like this is trying to get the feeling to come back out of the material. You know, you make the image and you hope the feeling then will emerge from that, because you've sent your feeling into the material. You hope it will come out again. But sometimes for me it doesn't come out when I'm looking at work. I think too much is happening here, so I feel overwhelmed by it, so I can't recognize my own processes of perception. I'll have better time with this kind of work, which is one step over from the body. It's kind of a surrogate body, let's say. And this is quite a nice work, I think. And Joseph Beuys, often his work was about the body. I guess Joseph Beuys is like ancient news to you guys, right? Like he's oh, okay. It was pretty interesting, and he was very formative for me, because you have to recognize that I was starting to look at work in the early 70s, and there wasn't a lot to look at, and I grew up in Vancouver, so there was even less. And I went on my first big art looking trip was in 1975, and I was traveling with a painter, and we were just being blown away up, down, and sideways by everything we saw. We'd never seen stuff like that before. And we went to this place called Mönchengladbach. It was one of these very first places out in the sticks that decided to build a big museum of contemporary art, and in that way it would be a destination for tourists. And somehow we got there, we took a train, and we're going in, and I didn't see this work, but I saw a piano covered in felt. You must know his piano covered in felt. And it was just sitting in the kind of the lobby. And I said, Dawn, see, that's what art should be like. Do you see that piano? Because I thought it was just a piano with a cover on it that was on its way to storage. Because that idea that Beuys was, the way he was working was new to the, let's say, the aesthetic spectrum. And he was making things that did kind of, were coextensive to our physicality. And the minimalists were doing it too. I had the same experience with minimal art. I went into a museum in London. They were showing Carl Andre, and I walked halfway across the lobby before I realized I was walking on top of one of his pieces of metal plates. And the recognition to look down and think I'm on top of the work was like an electric shock, because I wasn't supposed to be on top of the work. But what I'm trying to say is that those artists wanted the barrier between the viewer and the object to be less rigid, less firm, less solid than what I had grown up with. You've grown up with that already, that wall down, so you probably already know all that, but I had to find it. This one's far out. I just saw this a couple of years ago in Nice. She's better known for these outdoor works that are a figure like this with lots of color on them. But look at this conservator's nightmare here. It's just a little moth factory. So even though I would say, that's not my taste, like this, the body and all the kind of this and that, it was when I got up to the detail that I thought, she is radical. This is so brave, this semi-disgusting bunch of little babies stuck in this, it looks like old food on a plate or something. Kind of a wonderful work. But still, I can't do the body, so I'm just asking your permission to not do the body. No can do. Instead, I look for other things that are kind of alive. And as I say, I'm interested in addiction because of, it usually involves material that the user becomes bonded to or in some way codependent. And it's so easy to imagine the material, the alcohol, the drugs, or the cigarettes, having a role to play as though it's an active agent in this relationship. And it reminds me always that I think that I am the manager of the theater of things in my life, but I probably am being managed by the things in my life, and so that I'm not as, let's say, powerful as I think I am. So cigarettes have been good for me. For one thing, then, they can take an object that I've killed. So in this case, I killed a leather jacket by making a mold and casting it in this material that I'm talking about, this matrix G. What should I call that? Who's a sculpture teacher here? What do you call it? Do you use it? Do you know it's got latex and a mixed plaster with a hardener? Is it Forton?
Is it like acrylic gypsum? Is that
Yeah, acrylic gypsum. Is that what you call it?
Yeah.
Okay, it's acrylic gypsum. So I've killed the jacket. It will permanently and forever be in this position. But the cigarette will always be different, and the cigarette will always be marching to its death in a way. I like the cigarette because its life is so short. It's not even 5 minutes. I saw that in a movie where, who's that guy named Van Damme? What's his first name? Van Damme. He's Dutch. He's got muscles. Yeah, Jean-Claude. There's some movie, I couldn't find it. I wanted to find this little, take a screenshot. He took a cigarette for some reason that in the plot, and he marked minutes on the cigarette, because I guess he didn't have a clock or something, or a timer, and he needed to know he needed to know what 5 minutes was. So he watched the cigarette burn down, and I was watching this, and I thought, yeah, I'm stealing that. That's good. So the cigarette, the other thing I like about the cigarette, which I call the world, okay, sorry, cigarettes are not the world, but anything that I bring that I don't make, I call the world, and everything I make, I call sculpture. So when the world meets sculpture, I like them to have, acknowledge each other in a certain way. The sculpture is being submissive, let's say. The sculpture is being a servant to this little scrappy nothing thing, and this little scrappy nothing thing is being kind of rude, and so again a bit of life will start again, not again a bit of life will start again, that's not good writing, a bit of life will start again once I start to establish relationships between the parts in my work. This is just another version of the same idea. And this is the same mold, using the same mold casting again. So sometimes with the mold I'll do 3. I never do more than that because the mold starts to break down or I get tired. The mold breaks down because I'm so in love with shadows and invisible spaces. I spend all my time trying to capture the nether part of an object. The top of an object is easy, but the underneath parts are really the parts that make you believe that this is something because of the shadow. So it's sort of paradoxical, but what you can't see makes you believe in what you can see. So I work hard for those undercuts. It's also a fact that in commercial mold making and casting, of which many, many things around me come from mold making and casting in industry, they eschew undercuts because they cost money. It takes longer. So therefore, to distinguish this activity from another activity, I will go into the mouth of the thing that is disdained by the other activity, if you follow all those negative flips there. So, which might be that I don't take many things out of a mold. Sometimes I just get one cast and it has to be good because I'm essentially, even if it's a rubber mold, I'm essentially admitting it's going to be a waste mold because I'm going to have to cut off the rubber because I can't get it out, and I'm going to have to then dig it out with a little knife and fork and everything. And so the mold making, the attitude I bring to it is really an important part of the subject of the work. Another thing about the subject of the work is the casting is hollow. It wasn't until I started making casts that I suddenly looked at all those bronze sculptures. In Canada we have sculptures of queens and who else? Different men. And I was surprised how then I went up and they're hollow. I hadn't actually realized that for about 20 years of my life, that they're just made of pieces that are welded together and they're an empty volume. So in many of my works, and I don't think I have too many of them in this presentation, I exploit the hollowness that is the surprise extra space that you get inside of this appearance of a thing. So I can make a distinction between appearance and being, or appearance and the thing, which is another, let's say, conundrum that interests me a lot. Maybe another way to talk about how a work is formed is to talk about the relationship of the subject of the work, with the person making the work, and the means that person chooses to make the work. In a way, art works at the intersection of a lot of different things. And part of the feeling I get when I start to feel, okay, it's happening, is when I can migrate along one of these arteries and find this intersection with the other things I care about. Often when I start a work, I'm alone on a road. I have the donut. It's very lonely. I don't even know what I think about the donut. Then I have to determine how I'm going to treat it materially. But more important than anything, I have to figure out what my value system is relative to that donut. I know that sounds pretty, what does that sound like? Silly, but it's not silly. It's very serious. And I would say that's true for all. Subjects are a dime a dozen. Ideas are a dime a dozen. The hard part is, what are you going to do about it? You know, what are you going to do about it physically, and what are you going to do about it psychically, intellectually, and emotionally? So that brought me back to the donut. I thought, it will just get a cigarette because it's a perfect ashtray. So it didn't end up where I needed it. I started with the donut because I needed something for something, which I'm going to show you. It turned out through, even though I've been making work for over 50 years, it turned out I went along and I had to ask questions at every intersection, and I ended up in a different place than why I bought this stupid donut. Because I wanted it for this. I was going to stick it in the bottom, where you see the sock now. I was going to put the donut there. In this work, I took a garment box, you know, the cardboard box you would get if you bought a coat or something. I put it inside of another box, and then in the garment box, I made a garment out of 5 unloved garments, let's say, 5 garbage garments, until I got the 5 garbage garments to make one beautiful garment, which is easy to do. That's what designers do all the time. They're actually just recycling all the units that they've recycled. There's only, like in fashion, what are there, like 20 units? You just move them around. So, and I see students dress like that all the time, like they dress better than designers because they're just moving the units around. So I did a whole bunch of these garment things. I'm just showing you 2 of them. Where I took these different units of other clothings and put them together till I had something that I thought was really beautiful. I wanted to go from their destitution or their debilitated state and bring them to beauty in a way, which begins to describe my attitude towards things. Maybe I'm caught in the same maelstrom that we're all caught in, which is kind of this incessant desire and dissatisfaction that ends up in consumption. I'm probably caught in that, but I'm not, I think that a way out is to, I can't get out, but a way to make it less brutal and less destructive is to love things, basically appreciate things, care for things, cherish things, and kind of be grateful for them. So for that reason, I couldn't put a greasy donut into the bottom of this box, but I needed something that was not as fetishized as this garment thing I made, because that fetishizing is, what's wrong with fetish? There's something wrong with fetish. Maybe later we'll talk about that. There's something wrong with fetishizing things, but I can't kind of go there at this moment. But you probably know what I mean. There's something a little just, what is wrong with it? There's a word missing. It's obsessive in not a very productive way. So it's also, I guess here's another way to put it. If you become obsessed with something and it's running, a dialogue, it's running a dialogue in the front of your mind, you become blind to all the other things that are going on at the same time. So at any moment, there's a myriad of simultaneous dialogues that you're concerned with, but many of them are pushed to the back while you obsess with the most, wonderful thing in your life. And so maybe that's a destructive way to operate as well, is to kind of focus always on the most exciting and just not even notice all these other kinds of servant class objects or all this, it's almost as though that as we progress and develop, we're actually laying the path of our own destruction at the same time. And so I want to have at least 2 dialogues going. So I have the fetishized dialogue, which I've talked about, and then I have the kind of the unacknowledged, which is the sock under your bed or the while you're going through the closet wondering what you're going to wear to go out to meet people, there's a sock under your bed. I think of them, they exist in the world at the same time, but somehow our focus, my focus, is not generous. The other thing with these garments is I have a finger for all of them, kind of using the attributions, the provenance, the identification of the material as imparted to the garment itself. This one doesn't have words, it just has a pair of plastic pink shoes. So I have about 70 of these garments. I had like a heyday. I had a great summer where I just made them. I kind of did one a day as though I was doing a drawing, kind of. Then it took like ages to make these boxes. They took forever to make, so that was kind of foolish to make so many. This one just has, paper wrappers in the bottom of it. I think there were more things I was going to say, but I don't remember. Oh, there's 3 of them. It started with, I don't know, can you read that label? It says Charlton and Morgan, Vancouver, Canada. And I go to this big place called Value Village. We've still got one in Vancouver, but I think yours are all defunct. And I go flip, 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 flip. And if I see a label from a Vancouver store, I take it whatever it is, because this is sort of an image of a retail landscape that is disappearing. More and more I flip, and I see Gap, or I see, what all do you see? What do you see? I can't even think of what they are. The big stores, the fast fashion. So this started with me making these garments that evoked the Vancouver landscape, retail landscape of the past. I put this in here to talk about relationship of materials. Another way to adjust the time element or the lifespan question about materials is to mismatch them somewhat. And I've always really liked the way this piece works, because this tulle material, if it was wet, if anything happened to it, it wouldn't last a year in this climate here outside. In Vancouver, it would be rotten. You'd pick it up and it would fall to pieces. Whereas bronze will last for over 1,000 years, even in weather. So the skirt with this bronze upper and lower part, there's something so poignant and beautiful about their relationship that I kind of steal that idea too, to have things acknowledge each other, support each other in a certain kind of way. The material, I'm not thinking that material has feelings, by the way, okay? Let's just forget that. I'm having the feelings, but there's something possible in this relationship. It's possible for me to have a certain set of feelings that are interesting to me, and how they're pulled out by the material, by the objective world. And I try to be there as much as possible. I kind of want my work to be something and not be about something. In fact, I totally don't want it to be about something. I want it to be something. It doesn't always happen, but I do my best to make it be. And to do that, I kind of, I pay a lot of attention to it, and I don't use it as a signifier, so I don't instrumentalize these objects or images or materials. I follow them, let's say. I follow them to where they'll take me. In this case, someone gave me this coat. What was there? Okay, someone gave me this coat, and I thought, oh, bloody hell. We all had coats like that in the 60s, and that's how we went to the, anti-abortion marches, and excuse me, the other way around. See, that's why I'm not trustworthy on the topics. It's too funny. But mostly I was going to save the whales in the 60s. I was busy with the whales. And so I thought, it's funny that this is using it as a signifier, so I've just erased what I just said I wouldn't do. I thought it's funny, these coats actually were derived from First World War paraphernalia, and the Army and Navy bought them, or Gloverall in Britain bought the surplus and started selling it to people. I don't know if it's the First World War or the Second World War. And so hippies and bohos of all types, artists, always had duffel coats and would go to lefty marches. And so I had this coat and I thought, it's always going to be protesting, even as a sculpture, but I'm still going to kind of recognize its battle scars, let's say. So every single hole, every single thread that was frayed or worn thin, every single thing, I went with a tiny brush. If it was a big spot, I did yellow. If it was a medium spot, I did a different color. And for a small spot, I did a different color. So it becomes like what would you call it? What do you call it, the stars in the sky? What do you call that? The solar system? Constellation, yeah. I don't know much about the sky there. In the pocket are again, that kind of that secondary, I do know a lot about the sky, okay? I don't know why I said that. But right now I can't remember the words for what's up there. So that secondary story that's going is the story that's in the pocket. And so that's a cast cookie, a cast cigarette, and some papers. And there's the whale. I thought I would show you some things that I liked, that I've seen that I've liked. I still, I say I was so surprised in the 70s by everything I saw, but I still get kicked in the ass by really great art. Kathy Wilkes was a big find. I saw her at PS1 about 4 years ago, I guess. It was like magic. This is just, the thing I'm trying to do is make work that can't be represented, which is sort of antithetical to being an artist. But you've probably had the experience of seeing something, and something might be that you'd call art, and you can't really tell anybody really what it was like. And her show at PS1 was one of those. She could kind of conjure up a feeling about life that would come up like a big, corny, schmaltzy wave of emotion, but it never broke over you. It was like a tsunami of almost sentimentality, but it never broke into sentimentality. It stayed as sentiment, which is feeling. Sentimentality is vulgarized feeling or overused feeling. So another thing in art that I find is that, and maybe that's where the cigarettes come in, is that being cool is kind of important, or it used to be really important. And I always thought it's the opposite of what I want to be, because I don't want to be so far away from the thing that I feel animates me. I don't want to be so far away that I'm neutral towards it, or in any way kind of bigger than that, or on top of that, or I can handle it. I need to get as close as possible to that kind of warm, mushy, corny, sentimental, nostalgic place, as close as possible without kind of falling into it, in order to get what I need. And she was great at that. She also did this one. This is on a painting. So it's a girl's dress, I guess, upside down, full of holes that she's cut, and then the painting is underneath. This is just weird, I just put it in here, but I spent a year in Berlin a couple of years ago, and spent a lot of time looking at the wooden carvings of the 14th and 15th century, and I was fascinated with how they were being eaten, and they were pre-conservation, let's say, because it'd be centuries that nobody would care about these, and they'd just be rotting in somebody's basement, and then they'd be fetched and brought up. So two things interested me. One was this, that even material has a lifespan. It might be longer than ours, but it's there nevertheless. And that the world of art and appreciation of beauty, of which I think that I'm participating, is it stalls it, it conserves it, it slows it. And so if you put anything, if you can push it or wedge it into the art system, you can kind of guarantee it's going to last longer than it would outside, and that's really interesting. So you could put a piece of cake in. We should try that. I should have tried the donut. Put it in and see. They would have to replace the donut all the time, and then they would start to worry about, are they still going to make donuts like that in the future? Those donuts, maybe those are going to be obsolete. I have other works with food in them, and they can't get that food anymore. So, what was I talking about? Worms? I was talking about worms. Now I'm talking about moths and dogs who chew blankets, and bugs and things that destroy blankets. And I do to these what I did to the coat, which is just stop for a minute and be like the bulwark before the bin, kind of, and see if I can use this realm that I'm part of, this art realm, if I can use it to a purpose that will keep this thing in my world for longer. That's maybe a little too pretty. But this one's quite nice. So I just attend to every moth hole. I put this into cue me to talk about the different places that, if we're talking about the material world as produced by humans, which is product, objects and products, and we'll end up always talking about capitalism and consumerism and so on. There are many artists working with this subject, and they've been working with it for decades and decades. So the current hysteria about capitalism is not new. I suppose it's been around since, I don't know how far back, way back. But some do really interesting things. And some people deal with objects in their post-production phase. Andrew Kreps is really good at that. And this is kind of a beautiful work that he has kind of mini bicycles with these bags on them. Park MacArthur, do you know Park MacArthur? She's a woman who uses a wheelchair almost like for her whole body. And she does this kind of pre-production work that is so beautiful and compelling. They're just great big blocks of latex rubber, soft rubber, with their wrapping just pulled down. The marks come with the, from the factory or the producer. And there's something so human about them. This was in a show I was in. That's my work in the back, lying on the ground. This was a show in Zurich called Ungestalt. Ungestalt is kind of the falling apartness of things, which you might have gathered by now that entropy is my favorite force. This is the work that's in the back. This is a very old work of mine that is, I just put it in because I'm talking about the body and how afraid I am of the body. So there is no body here, but a body is implied just by those two little holes, because it's hollow. That's part of that hollow thing I talked about before. I should be looking at the time here. And then there's some artists like Phillida Barlow, so great, such a great artist. I don't know where she's at in terms of the spectrum of production. It's not pre-production, it's not post-production, it's her own production in a way, and using the most basic materials in the most intense way that, again, it kind of brings respect to those materials that you feel when you see the work. Here's another one of hers. This is like a great big maze that you go through. She's my age, by the way, which is encouraging. Wendy, what am I doing about time? Am I going too long here? Should I go faster?
Are we halfway or more than?
I don't know. I think I'll go a little faster because I've said everything that I need to say. This was when I was in Berlin when talk about post-production. So post-production is after something's hit retail and it gets bounced down the stairs, sold, resold, 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 then finally binned. So different artists will intervene at any given stage of that trip down to nothingness. And I'm always really interested in where did the aura go to? The thing that the forces that were at work to produce it in the first place, they have to be huge resources because You have to get all that, material, you have to extract it from the earth, and you have to organize it, you have to send it to the factory, you've got to get a designer, you've got to make the thing. So there's some reason all that force is at work. It can't just be about money. And then there's the force that drives us to grab those things that have been pushed out of the, the sausage machine. And so there's all this energy, and then all of a sudden it goes away from the object, and the energy remains, and it's just moved over to the next. And so I'm always looking at things and wondering, what did we love in the first place? Where did it go? Can it be retrieved? Do we know that we do this? Because the excitement of the new thing is so vital, and it's actually part of our survival. It does come from something pretty primitive. With animals, there's no doubt. It's just their eyes, right? Anything with eyes, there's something. Put a bird on it, put eyes on it. Everyone will love it. Except this guy didn't have any eyes. I don't know what happened. So Germany, as you know, invented the teddy bear. You might not know that, but they invented the teddy bear. So I was there, and I got all these little critters, and I just started swapping their parts around. And then I put them in relationships with other things so that they could look after each other. I wanted them to be agents and not just be these floppy, pathetic, leftover love sex toys, not sex toys, love slaves, They weren't sex toys. I don't think they were. So this guy's looking after a torn coat. And this guy's found a really torn coat. And this guy's just showing us a really kind of a cool coat I found that was worn by the Molson's delivery man. And inside he has all his little pockets and everything. So I love this customized coat. I love that the guy did this for his coat. And so I made someone to care about the coat. I also was really interested in going to Eastern Europe when I was in Berlin. This is in Poland. And because they were behind the Iron Curtain, there wasn't the same, wasn't global trade. And so the shoes were made, and these are an example, even though I just took these 2 years ago, this picture, I mean. They don't even have a name on them. Do you see there's no brand on them? Because there's not a capacity for brand if there's no competition. And I love the way they're offered to me in this window, in all their uniformity. It's kind of a beautiful scene. I also started finding shoes in Europe that were different from what I was used to. And it might be because of the Eastern Germany that a lot of things were still floating around. It was a different culture and a different material culture. So I started plucking out of the system the sort of extraordinary shoes, and then I started making boxes for them. And I made lots of boxes for them. At one point, I brought in a lot of friends who were artists, and everyone made boxes for whatever shoes they wanted. All the shoes are used. None of them are good, and none of them are special. Most of them are kind of aspirational. They kind of look like really good shoes, but they're probably not very good shoes. They're plastic, and they kind of look like leather. So they all had this poignancy, this kind of, it seemed that the shoes had longing to be with us, and then they fail in some way. So they're on a kind of a low plinth like this. There's like a display a little bit. I sort of stole it from the way they display shoes in the store. And on the very far left, you'll see a coffee cup that looks like this. So this is my donut, let's say. This is my cigarette. This is my unpertinent object. This is my pair of socks. In this case, I asked the curators to put new coffee in it every couple of days. And I wanted it to be an image that puts a time perspective on the work. And also, it's an image of what's at front of mind, what's at back of mind. You know, you see so often people have bought their coffees and then they just leave them in the lecture hall, still full of coffee. So I guess when I said much earlier that at least 3 lines are intersecting, one is the subject, one is the means I use to address the subject, but most important is my position relative to both those things. I would put myself on the spectrum of wanting to not enchantment, but just basic appreciation of things. So conservation's a big idea in that. So I make a sculpture of a glove that holds a conserved bird skin that's probably 150 years old. This is another conserved bird skin on top of a cast cardboard box. These are little antique birds that someone gave to me. Then I thought, I'm going to take these really disgusting life-size stuffies from Melissa and Doug and bring them back to the thing that inspired them. It was nature that inspired them, but it was commerce that made them so ugly. So I do that through mold making. In this case, I make my mold out of plastipaste, which is just a very foul fiberglassy material. And then I cast it in rubber. So this is cast in silicone rubber. And I don't have an image of the finished work because I sent it to New York during COVID and I wasn't able to go. I installed online. I didn't get a picture of the finished work. I'm somehow not able to unload or download or whatever you have to do of the gallery images. So all these images are from my little phone. So I did the same to one of Melissa and Doug's giraffes. And the back of mind is this, this collection of things, because I'm thinking back of mind is a desire for beauty that everybody has, a desire to love things, which, see, I'm not being critical of ourselves. I'm kind of sympathetic. I have compassion for this drive that makes us want to touch material, alter it, and maybe we know that we're ruining ourselves at the same time, that we're ruining things at the very same time. There, I think you had on a poster at some point, didn't you? Was that last year? Yeah. So he's a Melissa and Doug lion. I also like that these are toys for children. They're always standing up. I took all metal out of them. They had metal legs making them stand up, and the kids ride them and abuse them. And so I put them at rest, let's say. I reposition them, just like I did with the jackets and the gloves and everything, put them into a new story in a way. But he's still in a land of debris, and his back of the mind is people's little jewelry boxes, because that's where I started my, addiction to things, was like have a little treasure box, and I put my dog's ashes in there, I put my dog's dog collar in there, I put like a little dollar bill that came from a foreign country, a couple of stamps. But at the same time, shit happens. So this is a third one. This was a tiger. And on these platforms, I let shit happen. So I walk all over them. I'm moving stuff around and coffee gets spilled. So I'm getting near the end, and then we can talk. This is a work I tried to make but couldn't make. So as you see, I'm afraid of bodies. I'm not afraid of bodies. I'm just afraid of representations of bodies. But I collect these dolls. I don't collect these dolls. I accumulate these dolls. And I thought, I've got to do something with these dolls. So I hung them all with their heads at the same level. It was sort of interesting, but it was sort of not my thing. It's not really my thing. And out of all those dolls, only 2 survived, and this is one of them. And I have to say she got kind of beaten up because I worried about her pink skin, her basically white representation of a white person. And we were in the middle of all that we're in the middle of now, and I got self-conscious about that. So I painted her every color of the rainbow. For a while she was silver, then she was purple. I was trying to get out of that identity association through the color of her. I finally concluded that she was plastic. And I concluded that if she was similar to anything, she was similar to me, and I am pale skinned, so I just forgot it. But I had to scrape all these layers of struggle off of her, so it gave her an energetic look. And she's just clinging to the side of a giant cast piece of cardboard. By giant, I mean it's 9 feet tall. And it's quite beautiful. It's all silvery. And it just sits like a kind of a plate. It's rigid, and it just sits against the wall, and she's gripped onto the edge. Just like this girl is gripping onto this. I call this one gateway because I think the gateway. Oh, never mind why I call it gateway. Okay, now I just want to end with this and play. Okay, how do I do this? Do you see that this says Teresve, August 17th, 1902. Can you read it? To June 18th, 1956, I think. This is a work. This is a photographic work. I like that the tree now has a name and that the woman now has a proper body, which is a great big tree. I like how they've swapped. I can do this. And I wanted to play for you the title of my talk, which is I Have Wasted My Life, I think is pertinent. And I think I can, where's the Robert Pattinson one?
Over on the next tab.
Oh, yeah, okay. So this is the poem. It was written by James Wright in 1961, which was around the same time that Rachel Carson wrote The Silent Spring. And I think there's a relationship that we are still, the relationship between those two people and their subject, we are still in the middle of.
Over my head, I see the bronze butterfly, asleep on the black trunk, blowing like a leaf in green shadow. Down the ravine behind Duffy's empty house, the cowbells follow one another into the distances of the afternoon. To my right, in a field of sunlight between two pines, the droppings of last year's horses blaze up into golden stones. I lean back as the evening darkens and comes on. A chicken hawk floats over, looking for home. I have wasted my life.
Let me play James Wright reading the same. It's a sonnet. Sonnets kind of go boom, ba da boom, ba da boom, ba da boom, ba da boom, and then they twist at the end. So it's a form. Form is important. I forgot to talk about that. This one. So this is James Wright reading it to an audience, and the different voice, same words, different voice, different body. It's almost a different poem. But see what you think about the last line. Is it loud enough?
Over my head, I see the bronze butterfly asleep on the black trunk, blowing like a leaf in green shadow. And down the ravine behind the empty house, the cowbells follow one another into the distances of the afternoon. To my right, in a field of sunlight between two pines, the droppings of last year's horses blaze up into golden stones. I lean back as the evening darkens and comes on. A chicken hawk floats over, looking for home. I have wasted my life.
Okay, so that's the end of my talk. Well, I can't stop this. Close the window. Okay. Okay.
We have a bit of time for questions.
Yeah.
I was curious about your relation. Maybe you answered this already, but if you could talk about your relationship with trompe-l'oeil. Like, is it important for you that a viewer gets maybe tricked by the mold work that looks like just like a leather jacket or like a pleather jacket, but it isn't? It's a mold. Is that important to you, or does that matter?
It matters as long as they're not tricked for a long time.
Okay.
Just want it like just for a fraction of a second, so that the difference between appearance and the real becomes an experience. So often, so the way I put the color in is I put the color into the rubber and the static electricity of the rubber mold. So it's in reverse kind of. It's dry pigment, and I put that in, and the static electricity holds the pigment in place. I didn't show any very complex works, but some have many, many colors, and I just slap it in there. I don't like even use a magnifier. I don't take care. And so if you really looked at them compared to the real, they're way off. And so I'm interested in how the brain drives you into non-reality. I'm interested in the real, as I've said about 50 times. And the real to me is experienced through the body, and the body is the kind of the real. It's the last thing I will know, actually. As far as I know, that's true, but I haven't got there yet. But so, yeah, so to answer your question, they're not that realistic.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned with the donuts that it's a zero thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't have much to offer. And I think it was the same with the plastic shoes
Yeah.
that resemble leather.
Yeah.
Now, with the donuts, I was wondering what kind of makes them zero. Because with the plastic thing that looks like leather, it makes sense that the form is negated by plastic.
Yeah.
I was wondering with the donuts, how does that apply?
Yeah, the donuts are ubiquitous, easy to get, not valuable, not especially good for you. So what value do they have except for like a moment of entertainment or pleasure, a tiny moment of pleasure that with a cost to it. So they're zero in the sense that they're not up on the status pile as, I don't know, what is up there? Tofu? I don't know. Which one?
Is it a Queen Amman? They're kind of similar to a donut, but they have a different pedigree.
Yeah, there are foods that are more like truffles, or more exciting, I guess. So zero, they're not quite zero, but they're pretty low down. Nothing's zero, really. I don't think. Mm-hmm.
I'm curious about how you ended up with poetry. I'm taking a poetry class right now.
Oh yeah.
I'm curious about like how like maybe other influences go into your work, and maybe like that seems to be one. Or
I'm interested in poetry, and in the studio, since I have lots of hours of making, I can listen to podcasts. Podcasts with artists are the most boring thing in the world. And so is most writing about art is the most boring stuff in the world. But podcasts with writers and poets. Do you know David Naiman in Portland?
Yes.
Amazing. 2 hours he'll talk to somebody. It's amazing. So I'm listening to poetry through my ears, and I suddenly realized that the body was so important to the poem, because you're hearing people say. I also listen to the New Yorker poetry with Kevin Young, who's also really brilliant and talking to really brilliant young poets. So, and also here's the other thing. Art, when I started doing it, had no commercial value. In the 70s, it was flat. It all took off in the 80s. So I started when art was your own thing and you weren't bought or sold. And poets are like that now. Nobody asks for poetry. Nobody pays for it, really. So they're quite free to be good artists, because they're trying to get to this place of expression that is in a way impossible. I was going to ask you then, okay, you who are in the poetry course, what do you make of that poem? What does that last line mean?
I was really holding on to that last line actually. It's like, what was it? The sentiment like I've wasted my life, right?
Yeah.
I don't know yet, but it stuck with me, so I'm gonna reread it. And we're also reading Right also, so I'm kind of curious.
Oh yeah, yeah. I won't say what I think the last line means. It's interesting when you look up interpretations of that poem. The interpretation of the last line varies quite a bit. But for me, in the work I'm doing, I know exactly what it means. I have no doubt that he means something that I correspond with, that I agree with. He is a person who was a very good poet. And he was using his ability to represent his experience. And there he is simply lying on a hammock. Here I am explaining the poem. Lying on a hammock, which normally you say, you waste your life if you just lie on a hammock. But he's lying on the hammock and he sees the world. And there's the world. And the images that he brings are very beautiful. You know, like even the horse dung, last year's horse droppings are like... so he kind of, it's just despair, I guess, as to the impossibility of being an artist, the futility of it. Not to be too melodramatic. Mm-hmm.
In the boxes with garments, which were incredibly beautiful, the garments, I was very moved by them. And then in another piece, there was some crumpled gold, seemed like crumpled gold paper that was sort of holding things in place. And then in another piece that had nothing to do with that, I thought I saw some of it again.
Yeah.
There was the one time that I had noticed that there were repeated things, not so much between the garment pieces as a series, but something else. Or did I see that? Does that ring a bell?
Are you talking about the tissue paper that had a pattern?
Tissue,
Yeah, yeah. I've been using tissue paper for 5 years or so. So in works I haven't shown you, there's a lot of tissue paper. It's this such fragile paper. So I bought reams of about a dozen patterns. So it does show up again and again and again, because I have reams of it, you know, like big wads of it. They're just part of a decorative drive. You know, there's this drive. So it doesn't matter what goes with what, in a funny way. Was that a question? Did I answer that question?
Yeah, I was sort of, I guess it was an observation, but you answered what I was actually questioning.
I don't match anything.
Yeah. I didn't know if it was on purpose that there was, you were making a connection because everything else didn't seem to necessarily have something.
Right, right. Yeah. No, things will make their own connection in a funny way. You know, to overthink things is kind of fatal, because you can't, they're greased pigs, these signifiers. They'll go wherever they want. And so I've learned to relax with regard to meaning. And there is no meaning. Although I've just published a book, by the way, which I didn't bring with me. It's writing that I've done over the last 40 years. That a librarian in Montreal, who's the editor of the Concordia Press, started writing to me and saying, he said, I see you've written quite a bit of stuff. And I said, no, I haven't. And he said, no, I've got this, this, and this. He had about 10 pieces. They're short, all short. And I said, okay, that's the only 10. And then he just kept sending them till he had, like, I think there's about 40 pieces, all short. Things that I wrote, sometimes for a catalog, or I write about other artists, or some notes for students, or letters to my gallery, or a few lectures I've done, you know, like I did a lecture to conservation, international conservation group. And I labor over this writing. Man, I mean, I should have said to him, yes, I'm a writer, because my ass is sore from sitting and writing all this 40 years of writing. So this is just came out last month. You have to find it online. My book, published author.
I have a question about it seems like there's, in so much of your work, the idea of spillage is what, creates that uncertainty and unhinges, a very specific read, that it opens up various ways of understanding or viewing the work. And and I'm so curious about that relationship with the, and it seems so central that the body of the viewer or this kind of external body is always implied and not placed.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very curious about, ending up with that doll, the small doll,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like on this kind of object that is so, and that is a cast piece, right?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
is so evocative of its kind of the pressures that it's gone through to its making.
Yeah.
The kind of juxtapositions of that. It seems like that, and then the boxes also occupy a similar kind of space of
Mm-hmm.
like compiling and creating edges and closing in rather than letting that spillage happen. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious about the kind of, you know, the tendency to end up in one place or the other.
I guess it's a spectrum. I do want to, in every way, want to operate as fully on a spectrum of of whatever you're doing, you know, technically, emotionally, intellectually. I want to stretch as far as I can on both sides of the, what's this thing? So sometimes I'm holding it tighter, sometimes I'm letting it go. Probably at the very onset of working, which I didn't, at the very beginning of working, I didn't identify as an artist, and I was just working to hold my shit together. You know, it just felt really good to pull things together in the studio because my shit was everywhere. I don't mean my physical shit, I mean this shit. And so it's just a degree of comfort or discomfort with that. I think relative to some artists I admire, I'm pretty tight. I'm super tight. But that's just what I am. So if there's something I identify in the way I'm working that I'm kind of maybe not proud of, I just, I can't hate myself. I just go there. I go there and I understand what it is. When I was really young, I did repetition. Again, it was an anxiety response of some sort, to repeat. And that then, you know, you mold and you pop it out and you pop, oh, I'll do 50 of these. No, I'll do 200 of these, or I'll do 1,000 of these. And now when I visit students who are doing that, I know exactly what they're doing, that it's just a control thing. It's just anxiety, and it's calmed to a certain degree by control over material. Maybe a lot of artists are operating from that place, and the studio is kind of that place. It's like a chamber. When people come and help me with work, I use the word wabi-sabi. I say, we're very wabi-sabi here. So because maybe they're doing this or that, and they say, was this okay? This is a little off here? I go, it's all good. You know, it's all good. It came from you, it's good. I choose the people very carefully, though.
Any other questions? Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.